You ever been yelled at for mowing your own lawn? Not smoking weed, not hosting a biker rally, just cutting grass on your own land with your own mower while minding your own business. Me. That's how I met Belinda Crankston, the HOA president who made Mussolini look like a mall cop. They wanted control. I gave them a fraud investigation with their president in handcuffs. What this HOA Karen was hiding in my dirt would change everything. The woman who called cops while I mowed my ranch lawn had been using my property to hide her biggest secret. Comment where you're watching from. This story gets absolutely wild at me. All I wanted was to spend my Saturday pushing a mower, not pulling a lawsuit. The sun was out, the grass was thick, and my playlist was somewhere between CCR and Sweet Silence. 6 months into my new life post-divorce, I had finally found peace on my ranch, 40 acres of no one's business but mine. That was me until Belinda Crankston stormed onto my property like she'd just been evicted from a country club and blamed the nearest peasant. She skidded her white Mercedes into my gravel driveway, stomped out in a pair of ironed khakis, and bellowed, "You cannot mow your lawn without HOA approval," like my mower needed a permission slip. Now Belinda wasn't just a Karen, she was Karen 7.0, me. With Bluetooth-enabled entitlement and a laminated map tucked in a binder thicker than a divorce deposition. I politely removed my headphones and said, "This ranch isn't part of your HOA, me. That's why I bought it." She responded like I'd just told her Botox was a government conspiracy. "That is incorrect. Your property is clearly within our regulatory zone, and you are in violation of unapproved grass activity." Then she slapped a map into my hands like she was dropping the 10 Commandments. I squinted at it, and what do you know? The boundary lines were drawn thicker than her foundation. I said, "This looks like a toddler took a Sharpie to it." She yanked it back like I was about to eat it and hissed, "You will face enforcement if you refuse to cooperate." That's when Belinda dialed 911 to report a non-compliant mower incident, which I guess is HOA code for man with common sense. Deputy Wallace showed up, sunglasses half on, soul halfway gone. He took one look at the fake map and said, "Mom, this man's land isn't under HOA jurisdiction." But Belinda, bless her delusions, waved that laminated lie like it was a holy relic. "He's violating weekend quiet hours!" The mower was audible from my yoga studio. Wallace glanced at me. "It's 2047 on a Saturday." He deadpanned me. "Not midnight at a construction site." He gave me a nod and gave Belinda a warning. She gave me a death glare and revved her Mercedes like she wanted to run over my property deed. And that was just the first call. Monday, she phoned in a noise complaint because I sneezed too hard near the hydrangeas. Tuesday, she claimed unauthorized clippings had drifted onto AOA turf. Wednesday, she stood at the property line with a measuring tape and a purse full of judgment. I realized then, this wasn't about lawns. This was about territory. Belinda wasn't enforcing rules. She was extending an empire, one blade of grass at a time. That night I unrolled her ridiculous map on my kitchen table and lit it up like a crime scene. Under the right light, you could see the boundary lines had been drawn over, hand-altered, thickened, adjusted. My land was never in their HOA, but suddenly it was, according to her. That's when I realized, this wasn't a Karen throwing a fit. This was a cover-up dressed in khakis. And the kicker, I hadn't even started digging yet. Because what do you do when a Karen draws a fake map? You find out what she's trying to hide under it. Tuesday morning kicked off with the sound of tires crunching gravel and the unmistakable thunder of self-righteous fury. Belinda Crankston had returned, this time armed with what looked like a rolling suitcase of HOA legal scrolls and a new laminated map that somehow made my property look like it was the parking lot of her community clubhouse. She stormed right up to my fence, banged on the post like it owed her money, and shouted, "You have been formally notified of your boundary breach." Boundary breach. Lady, I wasn't building a runway, I was mowing grass and drinking Folgers. She demanded a meeting with the HOA Compliance Committee, which I assumed was just her cat and an overwatered fern named Harold. Within 48 hours, I received not one, not two, but 3 official-looking notices taped to my mailbox, all accusing me of various crimes against landscaping. One claimed my grass was aggressively uneven. Another said I had committed aesthetic pollution. The third accused me of willful mower abuse. I called the county clerk's office just to be sure, and my property was not part of Pine Bluff OA. Not now, not ever. But Belinda had rewritten the HOA's map with more creative liberty than a fantasy novelist on deadline. One of the maps even had a decorative compass rose in the corner, as if her lies needed graphic design. That Friday, as I trimmed a tree limb that dared to lean into my yard, Belinda called 911 again, this time claiming I was removing protected flora without authorization. Deputy Wallace returned, his coffee still steaming and his patience visibly evaporating. "Mom," he said through gritted teeth, That's a crabapple branch. Belinda's voice rose like a kettle on the verge of boiling. It's a heritage tree integral to our community's ecosystem. Wallace looked at me and muttered, "If she calls one more time, I'm fining her for emotional loitering." He wasn't joking. Saturday morning, I got a knock at my door from a guy named Kyle with code enforcement. Nice guy, apologetic. Said someone had reported me for building unauthorized structures, which, spoiler alert, I wasn't. I led him around the yard where he confirmed there were no rogue buildings. Unless you counted my wheelbarrow, which I guess could double as a minimalist studio apartment. He left shaking his head, promising to update the records. That afternoon, Belinda left a new notice: cease and desist all unpermitted earth disruption. Earth disruption. I was planting tomatoes, not tunneling to China. But the worst part wasn't even the paperwork or the police visits. It was the surveillance. Sunday at 2:17 p.m., I spotted her parked just off my property line in her Mercedes, camera in hand, snapping photos of my yard like she was documenting an alien landing site. For 2 hours she sat there clicking away, occasionally writing something in a notebook the size of a phone book. I waved. She didn't blink. She just lifted her sunglasses and mouthed something I couldn't hear, but I'm 9% sure was, "I will have order here." At that point, I knew this wasn't about property. This was about power, and I'd stepped on her manicured ego like a weed in her perfect little fantasy. Some people don't enforce rules to protect order, they enforce rules because it's the only way they feel powerful. And the moment you stop following their script, they panic like an actor who forgot their lines. That's when the real show begins. She wanted submission. I gave her raised eyebrows and paperwork from the county. She wanted silence. I cranked my mower and waved politely while edging my driveway into a perfect middle finger. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. No one fights this hard to control someone else's lawn, unless they're hiding something buried in it. And if that map was fake, what else had she doctored? What kind of HOA queen goes to war over a hedge? The kind who's got more to lose than shrubs and silence. And next, I'd find out why she'd pushed the last family off this land in record time. Ever seen a Karen try to rewrite county history? Wait till you hear what she tried to erase next. Monday started like most Mondays. Burnt coffee, unopened bills, and the soul deep sigh of a man trying to stay civil in a world ruled by lunatics. But this Monday came with a cherry on top, a hand-delivered notice taped to my door, charging me $2,000 in back dues to the Pine Bluff OA, which was fascinating considering I never joined, never agreed, and never even waved politely at that HOA. According to Belinda Crankston, I now owed them for inherited community benefits. What's next? A bill for sunlight absorbed while standing in HOA proximity. Maybe a fine for excessive use of oxygen without proper registration. I laughed it off at first. I figured maybe Belinda had just run out of neighbors to harass and was expanding her empire like Napoleon in a pantsuit. But then came the second envelope, this one printed on glossy paper, gold embossed like a wedding invitation from Lucifer. It said I had 10 days to enter voluntary compliance, or the HOA would pursue escalated enforcement remedies, including property lien and civil forfeiture proceedings. Lady, I grew up in a trailer with raccoons under it. I'm not scared of your scented letterhead. Still, I knew then this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a siege. So I did what any rational man does when he's being stalked by a woman who thinks bylaws outrank the Bill of Rights. I started filming everything. I installed motion sensors, a driveway camera, and a front door cam. And wouldn't you know it, the very next day I caught her, Belinda in her white SUV. Parked just outside my property line with a pair of binoculars so large they looked like she stole them from a Civil War museum. She was scribbling furiously into a spiral notebook labeled evidence. I don't know what she was documenting. Maybe my grass's emotional state, or the way my trash can lean slightly left on Wednesdays. By Wednesday it had gone full theater. I came home from work to find a stack of fresh papers taped to my truck windshield, citing me for vehicular noncompliance and visual disharmony. My 1996 Dodge Dakota, a faithful rust bucket of American steel, was apparently lowering neighborhood morale. The next notice accused my dog of unauthorized barking patterns. He's 12. He only barks when he sneezes. According to Belinda, that's a form of acoustic terrorism, and the best part, all the documents were branded with the HOA logo, which by now looked less like a seal of authority and more like a threat letter from a sock puppet government. I decided to check the county tax office again, Still not in the HOA, still not responsible for dues, but when I brought this up to Belinda, politely, in an email, with all the receipts, she replied with one line. This matter has been elevated to our legal response department. I have no idea who that is. Could be her cat in a wig named Judge Whiskers. But the threat was clear, comply or be crushed. Paranoia isn't a symptom in neighborhoods like this, it's a survival instinct. When someone accuses your grass of misconduct, you stop calling it crazy and start calling it consistent. That Friday I noticed something strange in one of the documents: the name of the previous owner. Not a lawyer, not a company, a family. I'd always figured this land came from a foreclosure or a quiet sale. But the name rang a bell: Morrison. I'd seen it once, faintly engraved on a mailbox that had long since been replaced. That night I sat at my kitchen table with all the fake fines, forged maps, and HOA gibberish spread out like a conspiracy theorist's dream board. One thing became clear: Belinda didn't want my lawn. She wanted what was underneath it. I thought I'd seen power trips, but Belinda was running a full dictatorship in khakis. Then I started digging and found out who used to live on my land. Ever wonder why some neighbors disappear overnight? Next, and I meet the folks Belinda ran off, and what they tell me makes the HOA threats look like a bedtime story. In most neighborhoods, a feud over wind chimes ends with someone giving up and switching to a birdhouse. But not in Pine Bluff. Belinda once fined a guy for wind chimes in a dissonant key. The man packed up, sold his house at a loss, and moved to Montana, where chimes can clang freely in the breeze like patriotic jazz. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about property lines or hedge heights. This was a pattern. Belinda didn't enforce HOA rules. She weaponized them like a bored dictator with a clipboard, and too much time between pilots' classes. I started talking to my neighbors casually at first. Turns out you only have to mention Belinda before people start whispering, like you just said, Beetlejuice, 3 times. Marla Thomas from down the road leaned in like she was confessing state secrets and whispered she got rid of the Morrisons. When I asked what that meant, she looked around and said, fence violation, Then suddenly they owed 18 grand for something called community meditation enhancements. They moved out in 2 weeks. Meditation enhancements. What is that? A rock garden blessed by Oprah. I found a guy named Curtis from 3 houses over who used to mow the Morrisons' lawn. He said Belinda once tried to fine him for operating commercial equipment during spiritual hours, which he assumed was a typo. It wasn't. According to Belinda, Sundays from 9 to noon were sacred OA time for quiet reflection, and any leaf blower was a violation of communal peace. Curtis laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that comes after too many warnings taped to your garbage bin. The Morrisons didn't stand a chance, he told me. Once she targets you, it's like being pecked to death by a Prada-wearing pigeon. I dug deeper, figuratively for now, and found out the Johnson family had asked to see budget receipts 2 years back. That was a mistake. They were immediately fined for unauthorized mulch tones and mailbox height inconsistency. Within 3 months they were gone, and just like the Morrisons, they sold for below market value, fast. Belinda's pattern was as subtle as a marching band in a library: pressure, nonsense fines, isolation, and finally sale. It wasn't incompetence. It was strategy. When 3 families sell early and 1 woman keeps smiling, it's not charm, it's a scheme. And if every exit is quiet, it's because someone made the noise too expensive. So I went back to my kitchen table and laid out everything: the fake fines, the made-up boundaries, and the stories of families who left under pressure. I looked at my own violations, and they suddenly made perfect sense. Belinda wasn't trying to uphold community standards. She was trying to protect a lie. A big one. Something she'd hidden. And if the Morrisons' land was part of that scheme, and now I owned it, then she had a real problem, and I had a shovel. I had a new theory. Belinda wasn't protecting property values. She was protecting herself. And the evidence. I was about to dig it up. Literally. Ever met a neighbor who runs everyone out, then smiles like it's a bake sale? Wait till you see what she buried behind the fence. Some folks bury time capsules with letters and candy wrappers. Belinda Crankston. She buried criminal ledgers in Ziploc bags, under what was supposed to be my future tomato patch. I wasn't even digging for secrets. I was marking out fence posts so she'd finally have a physical line she couldn't shriek across. About 50 yards from the edge of my land, my shovel clanged on something hard, and I muttered the classic southern phrase, "That ain't no root." I cleared out the dirt and found a metal box, rusted, heavy, and tucked away like shame under church pews. The lock had long given up its purpose, so I pried it open expecting maybe an old license plate or a squirrel's retirement plan. What I found instead was enough paperwork to make the IRS jealous. Dozens of documents in plastic sleeves, labeled and dated with alarming neatness. HOA check stubs made out to be Crankston Consulting, vague charges like emergency feng shui stabilization, due $12 and legal defense reserve $15,000 and my personal favorite, community aroma balancing E8500s. I'd smelled the AOA. There was no balance, only bitterness in Belinda's imported mulch. At first, I sat back, stunned. The receipts weren't just laughable, they were detailed. Every fake invoice listed a service, a date, and a payment trail. And every payment went to Belinda or one of her consulting firms, which all happened to use her P.O. box. I flipped through more. Topiary Emergency Response Team. Private Harmony Mediator. HO Neighborhood Harmony Drone Surveillance Subscription. Who knew extortion could come with this much branding? When I tallied it all up, it totaled just over 75,000. That's 75 grand stolen from the community, tucked in the dirt like a bad idea. Liars forget where they buried their secrets. Honest men just dig. When someone tries to bury the truth under fake charges and fancy words, it only takes one shovel and a little curiosity to strike gold, or in this case, embezzlement. I was holding the box, still kneeling in the dirt, when I heard a sound that'll haunt me forever. Branches snapping, fast footsteps, and the high-pitched scream of a woman who had just realized her whole life was about to get unlaminated. Belinda tore through the brush like a suburban tornado, hair frizzed, blouse half untucked. Oh, a badge flapping on her chest like it still meant something. "Put that down immediately! That is confidential community property," she shrieked, lunging toward me like she thought she could wrestle a felony into silence. I stood up slowly, box in hand, and said, "Funny, you buried it on my property." Her eyes locked on the open lid. She reached for it. And I took a deliberate step back. That's when the mask cracked. "You don't understand. That's sensitive material. I was protecting community integrity. Lady, you don't protect a neighborhood by billing it for invisible fountains and then hiding the receipts in someone else's yard. This is theft," she screamed, pointing at me now. The irony so thick you could shovel it too. "You are stealing private HOA records." She tried to snatch it, and I yanked the box away, causing her to stumble into a pile of her own bad decisions. Her hands flailed like she was swatting invisible bees. "I'll give you 20,000 right now, cash." Just hand it over and forget this ever happened. Belinda had gone from suburban warden to bribing lunatic in under 30 seconds. Her desperation leaked from every syllable. 50,000, you walk away and I'll make sure you get a very good offer for your ranch. That's when I knew. This box was just the tip of $1 million mud pie. I held the box in my hands, and for once, she was trespassing on my property. But when Belinda saw me with it, she went full Tasmanian devil. Ever seen a woman try to bribe her way out of a felony using breath mints and panic? Wait till you hear what she offered me next. Belinda Crankston stood in front of me like a malfunctioning Payday-Ada, full of lies, ready to burst, and absolutely certain she still had control of the party. Her mascara was sweating down her face like a watercolor painting losing its will to exist. $50,000, she said through clenched teeth. Just pretend this was a misunderstanding. I blinked, adjusted the box in my arms and replied, "Do bribes come with dental? I've got cavities." She did not laugh. Her version of humor involved 12,000 invoices for neighborhood aura rebalancing. Then came the rant. In under a minute, she went from pleading to threatening like someone scrolling through emotions on a broken remote. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," she barked. Then turned soft. "I did this for the community." Then sharp again. "You have no idea who you're messing with. I have friends in real estate, law enforcement, and the Rotary Club." She looked like a malfunctioning blender full of legal threats and organic wine. She lunged toward me again, and I held up the box like a garlic clove at a vampire brunch. She tried to compose herself, but her eyes darted like raccoons caught in headlights. "I'll make you a partner. We will run the HOA together." "You can set the fees?" That's when I knew she wasn't just unethical. She was straight up unhinged, offering me a seat at her HOA crime table like it was the Senate. She wasn't protecting the community. She was protecting a racket. And now she was unraveling like a polyester sweater caught on a nail. Her voice dropped to a whispers. "If you leave like the Morrisons, I'll make it worth your while. Power doesn't always corrupt. It just strips away the wallpaper. What's left underneath is either a foundation or rot." And Belinda, she was a moldy surprise party in a cocky pantsuit. I told her calmly, "Belinda, I don't want your money, your offers, or your HOA coloring books. I want you gone." That's when she exploded, voice rising. Face flushing, limbs flailing like she was trying to signal a plane with sheer desperation. "You'll regret this! I will ruin you! I will have your ranch condemned!" I started recording on my phone. Just in time to catch her screaming about strategic foreclosure maneuvers, and something about community influence points, which I think she made up on the spot. She sounded like a Monopoly villain on espresso. Then she tried emotional blackmail. "I was going to pay it back! I just needed more time!" The market crashed, my stocks fell. My nephew's startup failed. None of this was supposed to happen. "Ma'am, This isn't the housing crisis, it's your personal soap opera, and the final episode is looking like court TV. I stood there, still holding that rusted box like the HOA version of Pandora's crate, while she dropped every excuse from financial stress to spiritual confusion. You think I'm the villain, but I built this community from nothing, she howled. Yeah, with other people's money and a label maker, she whispered. If you leave like the Morrisons, I'll make it worth your while. But what she didn't know, I don't take bribes, I make court dates. Ever seen someone offer you 50 grand and self-incriminate in the same breath, Wait till you see Belinda Crankston tried to accuse me of stealing a box that was buried on my own land, That's like hiding your diary in someone's fridge and screaming, "Thief," when they reach for the milk, She marched down to the station and filed an official police report claiming I had trespassed onto protected HOA territory and stolen financial documents critical to community well-being. I half expected her to say I also kidnapped the neighborhood spirit animal and vandalized the moon. When Deputy Wallace showed up at my door looking tired enough to cry, I knew the circus had upgraded to a 3-ring production. He sighed, rubbed his temples, and asked, "Mr. Granger, do you have anything you'd like to share before this gets worse for everyone involved?" I nodded and handed him my phone. "Press play," I said. "And like a mixtape from hell?" He heard Belinda's voice crystal clear. "I'll give you $50,000. Just hand it over and forget this ever happened," followed by, "We can make this go away. No one has to know." Just leave like the Morrisons did. Wallace blinked. Then he blinked again like his brain had to defrost mid-disbelief. "Well," he muttered, "that changes things." He asked me to show him the spot where I found the box, so I led him through the brush back to the post hole and pointed down at the half-dug crater of HOA corruption. "That's my property line," I said, showing him the flag markers from the county survey. "About 50 yards inside." Wallace nodded slowly. "So she buried the evidence here and tried to accuse you of theft?" "Yes, sir," I said. "And tried to bribe me twice. Sounds like she's competing in all the felony categories." We got back to my porch and, speak of the devil in capri pants, there stood Belinda, arms folded, HOA badge dangling like it still had meaning. "Officer Wallace, I demand immediate arrest. He is in possession of stolen documents. This is a violation of civil order." Wallace raised a hand. "Mom." "I've heard the recording." Her eyes widened. "What recording?" "The one where you offered a bribe, mentioned prior families you forced out, and admitted to falsifying charges." The color drained from her face so fast you'd think someone unplugged her from the grid. When people scream about community values while stuffing fake invoices into the dirt, they're not protecting the neighborhood. They're hiding from accountability with a laminated smile. What happened next was something between a meltdown and a Broadway audition. Belinda started pacing like a wind-up doll, unraveling in real time. "You don't understand what I've done for this community! I maintained property values, I enforced order!" I was the only one willing to lead. Wallace just reached for the cuffs while she shouted, "You can't do this." "I am the hoe." He clicked the cuffs on as she flailed, shrieking something about spiritual bookkeeping and emergency landscaping theology. As she was led away, still yelling about bylaws like they were constitutional amendments, I stood there with the sun at my back and the box at my feet. Neighbors peeked from windows. Phones were recording, and Belinda was mid-rant about designated meditation shrubbery when Wallace read her rights. "Anything you say can and will be used." "I already know that!" "I've run annual meetings since 2016, she snapped. Wallace just said, "Great. Then you'll love depositions." The moment those cuffs clicked, she was still shouting HOA bylaws like it was a courtroom. But the real trial, that was still coming, and it would be televised. Think she was done confessing. Wait until she takes the stand and decides to run her own defense. Bring snacks, The Pine Bluff OA called an emergency meeting and voted to replace all decorative fines with actual financial audits. Then, in a move I can only describe as historic and therapeutic, they passed a unanimous bylaw. No individual named Belinda may hold any clipboard, binder, or laminated document within community limits. It wasn't legally binding, but spiritually. That vote healed the town. They also voted to reimburse every family she bled dry, plus interest. For once, OA stood for humans owning accountability. The courtroom was packed the day Belinda was sentenced. Even the judge looked exhausted, like he'd been forced to read every HOA newsletter from the last decade. The prosecution laid out fake invoices like they were playing HOA bingo. A $15,000 for emergency meditation shelter fabrication. "That's a TARP, Your Honor." Belinda tried to argue she was owed money for her leadership. "I preserved order." "I was the pillar holding this neighborhood together," she wailed. The judge replied, "Mom, That pillar was made of hot glue and theft. Her sentence, 4 years in prison, the $300,000 in restitution, me 5 years probation. And, for poetic justice's sake, 500 hours of community service mowing the very lawns she once fined for being too enthusiastic. I wish I were joking, me. But her first assignment was trimming the Johnsons' front yard, me. The same folks she accused of blatant grass misconduct. Watching her wrestle a mower in an orange vest while neighbors waved from porch chairs like it was the Macy's parade. That was therapy. Meanie. Lesson. Me, sometimes justice doesn't wear robes. It wears gardening gloves. And occasionally, it sweats through a polyester jumpsuit while pushing a rusty Toro past the mailbox of someone it once tried to bankrupt. Things changed after that. The Morrison family moved back. The HOA installed real oversight. My name was cleared, the fines were dropped, and the box, oh, me, the infamous metal box, was put on display in the community center with a plaque that read, "Don't bury your lies near a mechanic." Kids started calling my fence line the Great Wall of Karen. Me, tourists snapped photos. Someone made a t-shirt. A local band wrote a folk song titled, "Mow Down the Madness." It slapped me. I tore out the patch where I'd found the box and planted vegetables. Tomatoes, me, squash and bell peppers right over the spot where Belinda once buried her shame. I even gave them nicknames. The zucchini was District Attorney, the cherry tomatoes were the Jury, and the jalapenos, me, Revenge. Officer Wallace still stops by every so often, usually to admire my pepper harvest or ask if I'm planning to write a book. "You could call it Law and Order," he said last week, me, dead serious. And me, I went back to mowing lawns one swath at a time, because sometimes the sharpest blade isn't on your mower, it's the truth. Me. Ever wondered what happens when the HOA villain gets sentenced and whacked? Stick around. I've got stories, and none of them are buried. You know, me, I didn't start this journey looking to be a whistleblower. I just wanted to mow my lawn without getting screamed at by a woman who thought laminated paper outranked the US Constitution, me. But what started with a fake map and a rusted box ended with a community reclaiming its voice, and a man learning that peace doesn't always mean silence. Sometimes it means speaking up, standing your ground, me. And yes, digging. The real victory wasn't Belinda's arrest. It was watching my neighbors go from afraid to empowered. It was seeing families move back, old friendships rekindle, me. And knowing a vegetable garden now grows where manipulation once rotted underground. That fence I built, it didn't just keep her out, it brought the town back in, me. And in a world where folks often mind their business to stay out of trouble, I learned this: justice doesn't knock. Sometimes it waits underground, me, until someone brave enough picks up a shovel. So if this story made you laugh, think, or feel a little fired up about standing up to the Belindas of the world, do us a favor, hit that like button, me. Leave a comment about the wildest HOA rule you've ever heard, and subscribe so you don't miss the next tale where kindness meets chaos and justice has a lawnmower. And remember, me, the truth always grows back, especially when you plant it deep